Some betrayals don't announce themselves with shouting or violence. Some come disguised as concern, wrapped in the language of love, delivered by hands you're supposed to trust. Forgive her. She just wants to help. 13 years I heard those words. Until that Saturday morning when I watched my mother-in-law pour capsules into my coffee. I switched the cups. Silently. She drank her own poison. My name is Robert Campos. I'm 42 years old, and I've worked as a mechanical engineer for 17 years at a multinational industrial equipment company in Houston, Texas. I coordinate automation projects across the entire Southwest region. I'm known for precision, for staying calm under pressure, and for my ability to solve complex problems without losing control. My father was an industrial maintenance mechanic, and he taught me early that details matter and that paper documents everything. I never imagined that lesson would become so crucial in my personal life. I met Juliana at a mutual friend's wedding 15 years ago. She was a literature teacher with a smile that lit up any room, and she shared my love for old movies and walks along the beach. We got married 2 years later in April, a simple ceremony in downtown Austin. From day one, I noticed the constant presence of Marcia Oliveira, my mother-in-law. She was a retired high school teacher, 61 years old, and she made it very clear through every gesture and comment that no man would ever be good enough for her only daughter. Juliana was everything to her, and that meant anyone who entered her daughter's life would be seen as competition or threat. In the early years of marriage, I learned to navigate Marcia's subtle comments about my ability to provide, her unannounced visits that always coincided with our couple plans, her opinions about where we should live and how we should spend our money. Juliana always asked me to let it go, said her mother just wanted to help, that she'd been alone since her father died 10 years earlier. I understood Marcia's loneliness, so I tolerated it. I stayed polite, responded with respect, and tried to keep the peace. My wife was caught in the middle, and I didn't want to force her to choose between us. Life went on. We worked hard, traveled when we could, and planned for the future. We wanted to grow our family. We tried for 3 years to have biological children without success. We did tests, consulted specialists, and eventually decided on adoption. It was a difficult decision, but the right one for us. We entered the National Registry and waited 6 entire years. During that time, Marcia made a point of commenting on my inability to give her grandchildren, always disguising the insults as maternal concern. Juliana defended her mother. I took deep breaths and moved forward. Last March, we got the call that would change everything. There was a child for us. Gabriel was 3 years old with huge brown eyes and a shy smile that melted my heart at the first meeting. The legal process was completed quickly. Gabriel arrived at our house on a rainy Thursday. We transformed the guest room into a universe of astronauts and planets. Juliana reduced her workload. I adjusted my schedule to be more present. For the first time in years, our home felt complete. Marcia visited frequently, always bringing gifts and making a point of calling Gabriel her little grandson. I observed but said nothing. It seemed harmless. The first signs started subtle. Gabriel, who was adapting wonderfully, began having restless nights about 3 months after arriving. He'd wake up crying, saying he didn't feel well. The pediatrician found nothing wrong in the exams. Juliana thought it was normal anxiety from the adaptation process. I believed that too, but something bothered me. I noticed the episodes always happened on nights after Marcia had spent the day with Gabriel while we were at work. I mentioned this to Juliana in casual conversation. She said I was seeing things that weren't there. I kept the observation to myself. On a Saturday afternoon, 4 months after Gabriel arrived, we were all home. It was a regular family day. Strong sunlight coming through the windows, Gabriel playing with building blocks in the living room, Juliana preparing lunch, Marcia sitting on the couch flipping through a magazine. I was on the floor with Gabriel building a tower when my phone rang. It was my senior manager with an emergency at an industrial plant in Pasadena. He needed urgent technical information. I left my coffee with milk on the kitchen table and went to the office to get some files from the computer. The call lasted about 7 minutes. I came back down the hallway with the folder of documents in my hand. The house was too quiet. Gabriel had gone to the bathroom. Juliana was in the backyard hanging laundry. That's when I saw it through the reflection in the glass door that separates the kitchen from the laundry room. Marcia was near the table. She looked around nervously, checking if she was alone. Then she pulled something from her jeans pocket, 2 small capsules. With quick, precise movements, she opened the capsules and poured the contents into my coffee with milk. She stirred it with a spoon that was on the table, put the empty capsules back in her pocket. wiped the spoon with a dish towel, went back outside as if nothing had happened. I felt my heart race. My vision became sharp in a strange way, like when you focus a camera and everything around it blurs. I took 3 deep breaths, couldn't make noise, couldn't let her realize I'd seen. I entered the kitchen silently, grabbed another identical cup from the shelf, made fresh coffee with milk from the thermal carafe, made sure the color was exactly the same. When I heard Marcia talking with Juliana in the backyard, I switched the cups. The contaminated one went to the position where she always left her green thermal mug. The original I stored in an airtight container I grabbed from the cabinet, sealed it well, put it in a plastic bag and took it to the trunk of my car, hiding it inside a cooler with ice that we used for beach trips. Something changed inside me in that moment. It wasn't exactly anger. It was something colder, denser, more calculated. I went back to the living room, sat on the floor with Gabriel, continued playing with blocks as if nothing had happened. My voice was normal. My hands weren't shaking. I watched Marcia come back from outside, grab the green thermal mug without suspecting anything, and start drinking while talking with Juliana about plans for Gabriel's birthday that would be in 6 weeks. She took 3 long sips. I counted mentally. 20 minutes later, Marcia started complaining of dizziness. Her voice became slurred. She said she had nausea and a strange drowsiness. Juliana got worried, asked if her mother was okay. Marcia tried to minimize it, said it was probably just low blood sugar, but her condition got worse quickly. Within 10 minutes she was pale, sweating, with dilated pupils and confused speech. I suggested calling 911. Juliana agreed. The paramedics arrived in 12 minutes, checked vital signs. Blood pressure was dangerously low, heart rate irregular. They asked what she had eaten or drunk. Marcia said only coffee with milk. One of the paramedics, a guy named Mike with about 15 years of experience visible in his eyes, looked at me seriously, asked if we had the cup she drank from. I pointed to the green thermal mug. He put on latex gloves and carefully placed it in an evidence bag. They took Marcia to Memorial Hermann Hospital. Juliana went in the ambulance. I stayed with Gabriel, called my sister Patricia to come stay with him, and followed in my car to the hospital. In the ER, things moved fast. They did blood tests, toxicology screening, gastric lavage. A doctor came to talk to us in the waiting room. His name was Dr. Marcus Rivera, emergency medicine specialist with 20 years at that hospital. He looked at me and Juliana with a serious expression, said Marcia had been poisoned. High levels of benzodiazepines and sedatives incompatible with accidental ingestion. Intentional poisoning. They were legally obligated to notify the police. A patrol officer arrived half an hour later, took our statements, asked routine questions. I answered calmly, explained what I'd seen, told him about the switched cups, about the original sample I'd secured in the car. His expression changed. He called a detective. Detective Paul Morrison arrived an hour later. Homicide Division, 15 years in major crimes. He listened to my full story, asked for the secured sample. I took him to the parking garage, opened the cooler, handed over the sealed container. He treated it like critical evidence, thanked me for the presence of mind to preserve it. What I didn't tell Juliana, what I didn't tell the detective that day, was that this wasn't the first time I suspected. The pieces had been fitting together slowly over months, but I had no proof, just a growing certainty that something was wrong. Gabriel's restless nights. My own unexplained episodes of extreme fatigue on weekends when Marcia visited. Times when I felt confused, disoriented, blamed it on work stress. Now I knew, and I'd caught her. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed to understand the full extent of what she'd been doing, for how long and why. Most importantly, I needed to protect my family permanently, not just react to one incident. The next day, I called my best friend since college, Carlos Mendez. He's a criminal defense attorney, one of the best in Houston, and I knew he'd keep everything confidential, even before deciding to take the case. I drove to his office downtown, explained everything, every detail, every suspicion, every inconsistency I'd noticed over the years. Carlos listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked me a direct question. "Do you want to just protect yourself, or do you want the whole truth?" I said the whole truth. He nodded, said that would require time, money, strategy, and absolute discretion. I had all four. Carlos connected me with Andre Barbosa, a private investigator who specialized in complex family cases. Andre was ex-FBI, had worked financial crimes and domestic terrorism before going private. He was methodical, discreet, and expensive. We met at a coffee shop in the Woodlands, far from where anyone knew me. I gave him everything: timeline of events, medical records from Gabriel's pediatrician showing the pattern of symptoms, my own medical records showing unexplained lab abnormalities, details about Marcia, her routine, her finances, her social connections. Andre took notes on an encrypted tablet, said he'd need 6 to 8 weeks to build a complete picture. I said take whatever time necessary. This couldn't fail. What Andre uncovered in the following weeks was worse than I imagined. He started with Marcia's finances. Bank records showed regular cash withdrawals of $300 to $500 over the past 18 months. No clear explanation for the amounts or frequency. He tracked her movements using traffic cameras and cell tower data, legally obtained through Carlos's court petitions. Marcia had been making regular trips to a pharmacy in Katy, 30 miles from her home, always paying cash. The pharmacy had loose controls. Andre found 3 different prescriptions for controlled substances in Marcia's name, but the signatures didn't match her actual doctor. Forgeries, poorly done, but effective enough to fool a busy pharmacy tech. Then he went deeper, traced her online activity through her laptop, which Gabriel's babysitter had access to and agreed to help us monitor. Marcia had been researching for months: undetectable poisons, long-term effects of benzodiazepine use, how to cause cognitive decline without obvious symptoms, symptoms of dementia, legal processes for declaring someone mentally incompetent, requirements for taking guardianship of a minor. It was all there, documented, saved in folders she thought were private. She wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was trying to slowly destroy my mental capacity so she could take custody of Gabriel away from us and have her daughter to herself again. Eliminate me from the family legally and permanently. Andre found something else. Communication logs recovered from her cell phone showed messages with a corrupt lawyer named Maurice Santana. They'd been planning. Marcia would gradually poison me to create documented cognitive and health problems. Maurice would file for emergency custody of Gabriel based on my supposed incapacity. They'd use paid witnesses, neighbors she'd been manipulating, the babysitter she'd been pressuring, all coordinated, all planned, all written down in messages they thought were deleted. Andre had recovered everything. Digital forensics, every text, every email, every search history entry. 1,700 pages of documentation. I sat in Carlos's office reading through it all. My hands didn't shake. My voice stayed level. But something cold settled in my chest. This woman had been trying to kill me slowly, and she almost succeeded. The most disturbing discovery came when Andre traced back further. He found a pattern. Marcia had done this before. 16 years ago, before I ever met Juliana. There had been another man, Fernando Guimaraes. He'd dated Juliana seriously for 8 months. They were talking about engagement. Then suddenly he ended things, moved to Washington, D.C., changed his phone number, cut all contact. Juliana had been devastated. Marcia had comforted her daughter, said he wasn't good enough anyway. Andre found Fernando. He was now 44, working as an accountant, married with 2 kids. At first he didn't want to talk. Then Andre explained why he was asking. Fernando went quiet on the phone. Then he said yes, he'd meet. We met at a hotel restaurant near Dulles Airport. Fernando looked tired, older than his years. He ordered coffee, held the cup with both hands like he needed the warmth, started talking, said that when he was dating Juliana, Marcia had been friendly at first, then possessive, then hostile. She started making comments about his job, his family, his worthiness. He tried to ignore it. Then strange things began happening. He'd feel sick after family dinners at Marcia's house, unexplained dizzy spells, memory problems. His work performance suffered. His supervisor noticed. Then one night, he woke up in the hospital. They'd pumped his stomach, severe poisoning. The doctors asked what he'd eaten. He remembered having dinner at Marcia's, just the 2 of them. Juliana was at a conference. He told the police his suspicions. They investigated but found nothing. Marcia had cleaned everything. No evidence, no proof. Fernando said the detective advised him that without evidence, accusing her could open him to defamation charges. He decided to just leave, broke up with Juliana with a vague excuse, moved across the country, started over, never looked back, spent years in therapy dealing with the trauma. He looked me in the eyes when he finished the story, said he was sorry he didn't do more. Sorry he didn't warn Juliana. But he'd been young, scared, and alone. I told him I understood, asked if he'd be willing to give a formal statement and testify if it came to that. He hesitated, looked down at his coffee, then nodded, said yes. If it would stop her from hurting someone else, he'd do it. We had our witness. We had the pattern. We had proof this was long-term predatory behavior, not a single mistake. While Andre worked, I started my own documentation. I installed security cameras throughout our house. Hidden. Professional grade. 4K resolution. Audio capable. 12 different angles covering every room except bathrooms. All data stored encrypted in cloud servers with redundant backups. I didn't tell Juliana. Not yet. Couldn't risk Marcia somehow finding out. The cameras ran 24 hours a day. Every visit Marcia made was recorded. Every interaction with Gabriel. Every moment she thought she was alone. I reviewed footage every night after Juliana went to sleep. Watched Marcia's behavior patterns. Documented everything in a private encrypted log only Carlos and Andre had access to. 3 weeks into surveillance, I caught it. Clear video showing Marcia entering our kitchen while Juliana was showering and Gabriel was napping. She opened our medicine cabinet, took out Gabriel's children's vitamins, emptied half the capsules, refilled them with white powder from a small envelope in her purse, put them back, left the kitchen, all captured in perfect 4K clarity. I felt sick watching it. This woman was poisoning a 3-year-old child, her own grandson. I immediately replaced those vitamins with identical new ones I bought, secured the contaminated bottle in evidence bags, had it tested at 3 independent labs. Results came back identical. The vitamins had been contaminated with crushed sleeping pills, amounts that could cause serious harm to a small child. That's when I knew we had enough. Time to act. Carlos filed a detailed complaint with the Houston Police Department, provided the complete dossier Andre had built, 412 pages, organized chronologically, bank records, prescription forgeries, communications with Maurice Santana, digital evidence, video surveillance showing Marcia adulterating food and medicine, laboratory reports from 3 independent facilities confirming poisoning, medical records showing patterns of illness, Fernando's formal statement notarized and witnessed, the forensic analysis of the contaminated coffee from the hospital incident. Everything documented, everything verified, everything irrefutable. The complaint went to Detective Paul Morrison, the same detective who'd responded to the hospital. He read the file, called Carlos, said this was one of the most thoroughly documented cases he'd ever seen, opened a formal criminal investigation immediately. 2 days later, detectives Paul Morrison and Carla Stevens appeared at Marcia's apartment at 9 in the morning with an arrest warrant. They were accompanied by a forensic team. The warrant authorized search of the entire residence. They found 23 boxes of controlled substances hidden in her bedroom closet and kitchen cabinets. Benzodiazepines, sedatives, muscle relaxants, antipsychotics. Enough to open a small pharmacy. They found a notebook handwritten 73 pages documenting her entire plan. Dates, dosages, expected effects, notes about my behavior, observations about Gabriel, plans for the custody case, contact information for Maurice and 3 potential false witnesses, estimates for how long it would take to incapacitate me completely. She'd written everything down, every crime, every intention, every step of the conspiracy. The detectives photographed every page, confiscated every medication, put Marcia in handcuffs right there in her living room while she screamed that I had set her up, that it was all lies. Juliana arrived 20 minutes later. Gabriel was in the car with my sister Patricia, who I'd called for help. My wife got out practically running, saw the police car, saw her mother in handcuffs, started screaming, asking what was happening. Paul and Carla took her inside the house. I stayed outside with Gabriel in my arms. Didn't want him to see any of that. Inside, the investigators showed Juliana the evidence. High-resolution camera recordings showing Marcia adulterating drinks and food. Toxicology reports from 3 laboratories confirming poisoning. The 73-page notebook with the entire criminal plan described meticulously. Forged prescriptions. The 23 boxes of controlled medications found hidden in 2 different cabinets. Recovered phone conversations planning to destroy my life and career. I heard Juliana screaming inside, then silence, then sobbing. I was holding Gabriel, who was asking why Mommy was crying. I said everything was okay, that we'd go home soon. Patricia took the boy to the car. I went inside. Juliana was sitting on the couch, pale, trembling. She looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. It was pain, shock, betrayal, and devastating confusion. I sat beside her, held her hand. She pulled away, asked why I hadn't told her. I explained that I needed absolute certainty, that I couldn't accuse her mother based only on suspicions, that I needed irrefutable proof to protect our family. Showed her the technical dossier Andre had prepared. 412 pages organized chronologically, everything documented, everything verified, everything irrefutable. Juliana read in silence, turned page after page. Tears fell on the paper. When she got to the part about Fernando Guimaraes, she sobbed loudly, covered her face with her hands, said she didn't know anything, that she always believed her mother, that her whole life was a lie. I held her, said nothing. There were no words. Outside, Marcia was screaming that I'd invented everything, that I was a monster, that I was stealing her family. The neighbors watched in silence. Paul put Marcia in the patrol car. Carla came to us and explained the next steps. Custody hearing, formal criminal charges, likely confirmed preventive detention given the severity and evidence. Juliana couldn't stop crying. I took my wife home. Patricia stayed with Gabriel. We spent the rest of the day locked in the bedroom. Juliana alternated between crying and silence. In the following days, I simultaneously presented the complete dossier to the district attorney's office, the family court that had authorized Gabriel's adoption, and the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. Each institution opened its own investigation. The case hit the local press. Headlines about mother-in-law who tried to poison son-in-law and plan adoption fraud. Maurice Santana, the corrupt lawyer, was summoned the same day. His law license was preventively suspended. Ethics investigation was opened. He tried to claim he didn't know the accusations were false. Carlos presented the recovered messages, where Maurice clearly admitted knowing about the fraud. He was indicted as co-conspirator. The witnesses Marcia was manipulating were interviewed. The neighbor from apartment 302 admitted receiving $3,200 to lie. The babysitter cried and said Marcia had convinced her I was dangerous. The criminal case advanced rapidly given the strength of the evidence. Marcia tried 3 different lawyers. All quit when they saw the volume of proof. In the end, she was defended by a public defender. At the main hearing, prosecutor Rodrigo Farias presented 127 pieces of evidence, recordings, lab reports, documents, witnesses, expert analyses, forensics. Fernando Guimaraes came from DC and testified about what Marcia had done to him 16 years before. Juliana was in the courtroom, heard everything, watched her mother try to deny, then try to minimize, then finally fall silent. Judge Marcus Anderson from the Second Criminal Court heard everything with a severe expression. When it ended, he ordered confirmed preventive detention, risk to public safety, extreme severity, premeditation, attempted murder with special circumstances, forgery of public documents, criminal conspiracy for procedural fraud. The trial happened 7 months later. Jury trial, 12 jurors. Prosecutor Rodrigo methodically presented the case. 3 days of trial. I testified on the second day, explained everything, showed the evidence, kept my voice calm. Juliana didn't go, couldn't. She'd been in intensive therapy since her mother's arrest, trying to process decades of psychological manipulation. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all charges. Sentence: 9 years in federal prison for attempted murder with special circumstances, forgery of public documents, and criminal conspiracy. Maurice Santana was tried in separate proceedings, convicted to 6 years and permanently disbarred. The neighbor who lied received alternative sentencing and a fine. The babysitter was considered a victim of manipulation and wasn't prosecuted. Marcia filed an appeal. It was denied. Then another appeal, denied again. Finally accepted the sentence. She was transferred to the Federal Correctional Institution in Bryan to serve her time. The judge issued a permanent restraining order, prohibiting any approach within 500 meters of me, Juliana, or Gabriel. Prohibition of direct or indirect contact. Any violation would result in additional charges. Juliana formally requested complete communication cutoff, said she didn't want to see or speak with her mother anymore, needed to protect her son and rebuild her own life away from manipulation. We signed the petition together. It was granted. 2 years have passed. Today we live in the Woodlands in a gated community, far from the neighborhood where we used to live. New apartment, new life. Gabriel is 5 years old now, He's a healthy, happy, smart child, completely integrated into our family. He has no conscious memory of the traumatic events. Does preventive child therapy once a week with a psychologist specialized in adoption. He's doing very well. Juliana went through 2 intense years of therapy with sessions 3 times a week. Worked through every layer of manipulation she suffered from her own mother since childhood. Processed the betrayal, the lies, the psychological abuse disguised as maternal love. It was difficult. There were days she could barely get out of bed, but she fought. Today she's stronger, returned to teaching, smiles genuinely, completely supports the decision to cut contact. I was promoted to regional engineering manager at the company 6 months after the trial. My superiors were impressed with how I handled the situation while maintaining professionalism and work performance. I now lead a team of 23 engineers coordinating projects across 5 states. I became a volunteer with 3 adoptive parent support groups in Houston. I give talks about family safety, signs of manipulation, and the importance of documentation. Many parents reach out to me asking for advice. I help whenever I can. Marcia is serving her sentence. Lost all privileges after attempting to send an intimidating letter to Juliana through a fellow inmate. The restraining order is permanent. She definitively lost any right to contact with her daughter or grandson. She'll never see Gabriel grow up. She'll never participate in our lives again. I learned that protecting your family sometimes requires difficult decisions, executed with surgical precision. I learned that emotion has its place, but justice requires strategic coldness and meticulous documentation. I learned that staying calm while others lose control isn't weakness, it's strength. My father was right when he said details matter, and that paper documents everything. I also learned that true love doesn't manipulate, doesn't control, doesn't destroy. True love protects, trusts, and liberates. Juliana is learning that too. Gabriel will grow up knowing that. I look at my family today, safe and at peace, and I know every difficult decision was worth it. The truth always wins. It just needs patience, precision, and courage to document every step until justice becomes inevitable. And to you listening right now, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, if this story touched you in some way, leave your like down below. Comment what you thought, whether you do things differently. I want to know your opinion. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe now. There's a new story every day here, stories of people who went through difficult situations and managed to overcome them. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos.